Achilles could defeat entire armies, survive battles that terrified kings, and become the greatest warrior Greece had ever seen. But in the end, one small weakness brought down the man everyone believed was impossible to kill. If you've ever heard someone say, Achilles' heel, you've already heard the ending of his story. But the real journey is far more surprising than that famous phrase. Achilles wasn't just a great fighter. He was the heart of the Trojan War. His choices changed the fate of kingdoms, and his anger cost thousands of lives. Today, we're following his entire story, from the moment he was born to the day his legend became immortal. And by the end, you'll see why people are still talking about Achilles nearly 3,000 years later. Achilles was born to King Peleus and the sea goddess Thetis. According to Greek mythology, Thetis wanted to make her son impossible to kill. The most famous version of the story says she dipped baby Achilles into the river Styx, a magical river connected to the underworld. She held him by one heel. Every part of his body became protected, except the spot where she was holding him. That tiny weakness would one day become the most famous weak point in history. As Achilles grew older, it became clear he wasn't like other children. He was faster, stronger, and more fearless than anyone around him. He was trained by Chiron, the wise centaur who taught many Greek heroes. Under Chiron, Achilles learned how to fight, hunt, survive in the wild, and think like a leader. Before long, stories about the young warrior spread across Greece. But there was one problem. A prophecy said Achilles had two possible futures. The first was simple. He could stay home, live a long life, have a family, and die peacefully. The second was very different. He would become the greatest warrior the world had ever known, but he would die young. Most people would choose a long life. Achilles chose glory. Around this time, a prince from Troy named Paris kidnapped, or according to some versions, ran away with Helen, the wife of the Spartan king Menelaus. Helen was known as the most beautiful woman in the world. Her disappearance sparked one of history's most famous wars. Greek kings gathered a huge army to sail across the sea and attack Troy. But there was another prophecy. The Greeks could never win without Achilles. His mother knew this. To protect him, Thetis disguised Achilles as a girl and hid him among the daughters of King Lycomedes. It almost worked. Then came Odysseus. Known for his clever mind, Odysseus suspected the disguise. He placed jewelry, dresses, shields, and swords in front of the young women. Everyone admired the jewelry. Only one person reached for the weapons. Achilles had been discovered. Knowing his destiny, he joined the Greek army and sailed toward Troy. The greatest war of the ancient world had begun. Once the fighting started, Achilles became almost impossible to stop. Leading his elite soldiers, the Myrmidons, he defeated enemy champions one after another. Stories spread that seeing Achilles charge into battle was enough to make experienced soldiers run away. His speed was compared to fire sweeping through a forest. His spear rarely missed. His sword showed no mercy. Even many Trojan heroes refused to face him alone. For years, the Greeks pushed against the walls of Troy, but the city refused to fall. Then everything changed, not because of the Trojans, but because of Achilles' pride. One day, the Greek leader Agamemnon took a woman named Briseis from Achilles. To many today, it may seem like a small argument. Back then, it was a massive insult. Achilles believed his honor had been stolen. Instead of fighting, he refused to enter battle. His best warriors followed him. Without Achilles, the Greeks started losing. Trojan forces pushed them all the way back to their ships. The greatest warrior in Greece simply sat and watched. His anger became more dangerous than any Trojan army. As the Greeks faced disaster, Achilles' closest friend, Patroclus, begged to help. Achilles agreed to let him wear his famous armor. The hope was simple. The Trojans would think Achilles had returned and retreat. At first, the plan worked perfectly. The Trojans pulled back in fear. But then Patroclus chased them too far. He came face to face with Troy's greatest defender, Prince Hector. After a fierce fight, Hector killed Patroclus. When the news reached Achilles, everything changed. His anger disappeared. His grief took its place. He blamed himself. If he had fought, his friend would still be alive. From that moment on, Achilles cared about only one thing: revenge. Achilles returned to battle wearing new armor said to have been made by the god Hephaestus himself. His return shocked both armies. The Greeks found new hope. The Trojans felt fear. Achilles cut through the battlefield like a storm. No one could stop him. Eventually, he reached the gates of Troy. Waiting there stood Hector, the city's greatest hero. The man who had killed Patroclus. At first, Hector lost his courage and ran. The two warriors circled the city 3 times before Hector finally turned to fight. Their duel became one of the most famous battles in all of mythology. Hector fought bravely. But Achilles was simply too strong. With one perfectly aimed spear, Achilles struck Hector down. Then, in one of the darkest moments of his story, Achilles tied Hector's body to his chariot and dragged it around the walls of Troy. It was meant as revenge. Instead, it showed how grief and rage had changed him. Even heroes can lose themselves. Days later, Hector's father, King Priam, secretly entered the Greek camp. The old king begged Achilles for his son's body. Seeing a grieving father reminded Achilles of his own family. For the first time in a long while, compassion defeated anger. Achilles returned Hector's body so Troy could give its hero a proper funeral. It became one of the most human moments in the entire epic. Although Achilles had defeated nearly every enemy placed before him, his fate had already been written. During the later stages of the war, Paris fired an arrow at Achilles. According to legend, the god Apollo guided its flight. The arrow struck the one place that had never become protected: his heel. The greatest warrior in Greece fell because of the smallest weakness. His death shocked both armies. The Greeks had lost their strongest fighter. But his name would never disappear. Even today, thousands of years later, people still use the phrase, Achilles' heel, to describe one hidden weakness that can bring down even the strongest person. That is the power of his story. It isn't really about being unbeatable. It's about courage, pride, friendship, loss, and the simple truth that every person, no matter how great, has a weakness. Achilles didn't choose a long, quiet life. He chose a short life that the world would never forget. And judging by the fact that we're still telling his story after nearly 3,000 years, he got exactly what he wanted.